event that gets America fully involved in World War II. I would really say by 1940 we're involved logistically, given stuff through cash and carry through Lend-Lease. But 1941 is the game changer. Everything begins to happen here. Now, the first thing that begins to happen is that Hitler's aerial battle, if you will, is not working. Okay? The Luftwaffe, which these planes are, is not defeating England. And so Hitler is trying to avoid a commonly made mistake in history and wars, and that is fighting a two-front war. No one has ever won a two-front war. You get caught in the middle, you have to split your sides up, etc. However, in 1941, Hitler is forced into a two-front war because the English just won't quit. Churchill's nicknamed the Bulldog, the British Bulldog, and he's just got this fight about him, okay? So in 1941, Hitler will invade the Soviet Union and start this two-front war. It was actually called, as you can see here, Operation Barbarossa. And so here was the invasion plan. Now, okay, so two-front war in 1941, Operation Barbarossa refers to the invasion of Soviet Union by Hitler. He basically reneged. He went back on his pact. We knew it was going to happen, though, right? When they get into this is how they find the towns. Everything has been burned by order of Joseph Stalin. And so what the heck is this? Joseph Stalin had that area of Poland as a buffer zone. When he saw the Germans start to approaching, he ordered everyone who lived in those cities to be moved into Moscow and bigger cities and to burn everything behind them. Hence, it's called a scorched earth policy. They burned buildings to live in, they burned plants, they burned crops, they killed all the animals, so that when Hitler invaded in winter, there's no shelter for them to get out of the cold. There is no food, and if you can survive and make it through and not starve to death, you might have a chance. Whereas his soldiers are well rested and just waiting, kind of holding back for Hitler to get tired and get through. And that was the idea of the scorched earth policy, and it worked. Kind of tire them down. We'll talk about the big battle coming up in a moment in Stalingrad. Now, at this point, we have to turn our attention away, and we have to talk about Japan. What are we doing to Japan at this time? At this time, Japan is an island, and if you remember, I told you under Toyo, he's going to try to become imperialistic and take things that he wants. When he sees that the Soviet Union is not going to work, when he sees that China's not going to work because they have their own thing, they turn their attention to Southeast Asia. Okay, now in Southeast Asia, it's been colonized by the democratic powers. France has called what is called French Indochina, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. We have, of course, the Philippines. England has Singapore and Hong Kong, all of these places, Australia. And so they decide they're going to take Southeast Asia. So what we do, and they begin to get involved in all these things, Congress issues rather, what is called the Export Control Act. The Export Control Act banned, it banned the sale of two things to Japan, two things that they needed. First off, it was scrap metal, and secondly, it was airplane fuel. So we're not going to sell you anything because you're kind of going and messing with our friends, and so we don't want this to happen. Okay? So, let's talk about this stuff. Now, there are two areas in particular, three really, where they decide they're going to focus. The Japanese in retaliation will bomb and occupy Hong Kong and Singapore, which are owned by the, British. And we are, what? Friends with the British. So what do we do now? Instead of the Export Control Act, we issue a full-out embargo on Japan. We're not going to sell you anything because you've gone and messed with our friends. Okay. Here's the idea, right? U.S. Oil is fueling the Jap war machine, and Uncle Sam has cut the line. It's an embargo. So, the Japanese see where this is going, and rather than have America get involved when they try to go into the Philippines, and which they will do, they decide to try to take America out. All right. Now, I'm really not big on having you memorize dates, but this one you really need to know. December 7th, 1941. It's a very important day. FDR gave a very compelling speech, and I'll let you hear the speech here in a second. On December 7th, 1941, the Empire Nation of Japan will attack Pearl Harbor. It's in Hawaii, and it hoisted a lot of our fleet. Now, luckily for us, a lot of our fleet was already deployed at this time, going to the Philippines and prepare for that, going to the aid of the English. And so there weren't a lot of boats there. However, it was pretty catastrophic. It did do significant damage. Now, if you were to go visit today, there is a USS Arizona Memorial, right? Here it is right here. And so you come off the little dock and you go over. It's very important to the sailors' families. They said they didn't want these things brought up because it would be more or less disturbing the dead. It's a very serene place. And much like what happened with 9/11, if you come and mess with Americans on American soil, it doesn't make us want to quit. It makes us mad, and we want to get even. And so the Japs hoped to knock us out, but it just more or less made us stronger. Okay? So Pearl Harbor, there it is. Now, the next day, December 8th, FDR gave his famous speech. And it doesn't have it there, so I guess I'll have to show it to you. But in this speech, this is another time where you will actually kind of see him walk up to the front, and he does say, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, is a date which will live in infamy. Infamy means famous for negative reasons, for bad reasons. He later goes on to say, naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan deliberately and dastardly attacked Pearl Harbor. And he further goes to say, I asked Congress to say that since this was a deliberate and dastardly attack, that a state of war has declared between the United States and her allies and Japan and her allies. He's asking for war. The vote was really easy, and as of December 8th, 1941, we are in World War II on side of the Allies, which would be England. France is out, and there are many others, and we kind of changed the course of the war. The next thing we'll look at will be some of those issues.